I want to read a verse, first of all, in 1 John and chapter 2. John wrote this letter towards the end of the first century. And having observed the decline of Christianity in 60 years, the tremendous decline that we see in Revelation chapter 2 and 3, the condition of some of those churches. There were elders who were allowing their wives to be like Jezebel, bringing spiritual adultery into the church. Babylon had started even then in the so-called Christian churches. First century. There were people who were preaching like Balaam for money. You read it all in Revelation chapter 2 and 3. They had lost their first love. They were legalists. When you lose your love, you become a legalist. Every legalist is one who's lost his fervent love for Jesus and for others. You see all of that in the first century. And when John saw this, he must have sought God. He had a lot of time alone on the Isle of Patmos. And he says in 1 John chapter 2, he says in verse 18, "Children, it is the last hour." This is 95 AD, more than 1900 years ago. He says, it is the last hour. And you heard there's a big Antichrist coming, but already many antichrists, small antichrists, have already appeared. And these small antichrists, verse 19, have gone out from our midst. That means they were sitting in the church for many years, but the powerful preaching of the Apostle John drove them out. They got offended, they left. But through the years, as that John the Apostle died, and now and then, here and there would be a few people preaching in the spirit of the Apostle John who would drive out the spirit of the Antichrist from their local churches. But in most places in the world, that powerful preaching of the anointed preaching of the Apostle John was missing. And so the Antichrist flooded the church. The spirit of the Antichrist. The spirit of the Antichrist is a spirit of pride. It's a spirit of lying and hypocrisy. It's a spirit that loves money and position and power. It all comes right into the church. And it's the opposite of the Spirit of Christ. And he said, when he saw all this at that time, it is the last hour. That means it's already the last hour, we would say in modern terms, 11 p.m., 1 hour before midnight. And so when we think of the time in which we are living, 2008, it's going to be 2009 in a few days, we are past 11:59 p.m. We're in the last minute, in a few seconds before the coming of Christ. Now, it's one thing to talk about it, but if you really believed it, the way you would live every day would be different. Your passion to live for Jesus, to be like Jesus, to fervently love Him and to obey His commandments, and to manifest His glory by our life, and to build a church that manifests His glory, that passion will be so great that everything else will fade into insignificance. You know that song we sing, "Turn your eyes upon Jesus, look full in His wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of His glory and grace." There is only one way to know that you are looking into the face of Jesus, that the things of earth are becoming dim. Your interests and your concern about your money or even your concern about your health and your wealth. You see, health and wealth are the main things being preached as a gospel today. It's a false gospel. And I have to show this world and Christendom that I leave my health and wealth to God. I don't preach a health and wealth gospel, and I'm not worried about health or wealth because God takes care of that. Do you live like that? Can you say before God that you believe that God will take care of your wealth needs and your health needs? Otherwise, you got a variation of the health-wealth gospel also, even though you may not preach it, because you're so concerned about earthly things. The things of earth have not grown strangely dim. I'll tell you something, if you honor God, He'll honor you. If you seek to make Christ preeminent in everything, He'll take care of all your financial needs, He'll take care of all your physical needs, and your children's needs, and everything. And we've got to be living demonstrations, and every year our passion to demonstrate that to the world around us must be greater. We must never cool off. Never. When I see young people, teenagers and people in their 20s, pathetic and sluggish, I say, you guys should be setting me on fire. Not me setting you on fire. You should be setting me. I'm nearly 70. You guys are 20 and 30. What are you doing? Are you really allowing the Spirit of God to baptize you with fire so that you can be passionate for Jesus in these few seconds before He comes again? It is the last minute, dear friends, dear brothers and sisters. It is the last minute. And there are many, many more antichrists, spirits of the Antichrist, spirits that are contrary to the gospel of Jesus Christ. So we decided not to have a theme like we usually have for our conferences this time, but we've encouraged all those who share to speak on any theme, but it must be the burden of their heart. And I want to share, whenever I speak, the burden on my heart. You know, the Old Testament prophets would very often say the burden of the word of the Lord. You know what that means? Imagine carrying a heavy 100-kilo bag on your back and it bends you down. You can't even lift up your head and you struggle along. That's a burden. And how relieved you will be when you've reached your destination with that 100-kilo burden and dumped it where you should dump it. That's the way the prophets felt in the Old Testament when they had delivered the message. I mean, whether people accepted it or not was another thing. Most of the time, the people didn't accept it. It didn't make a difference. But they were relieved of the burden. The sad thing today is that many who preach don't have a burden. They have knowledge, they study, but they don't have a burden in their heart. It's not from their heart, it's from their head. And that's why Christendom is in the state it is in today. The burden of most preachers is to get honor or to make money, or in our churches it's not to make money, but it's probably to be a lord over others as an elder brother. That is as bad and as evil as living for money. And it distorts the message of the gospel. You know, very often we can think, well, we're not after money in our churches, so we're okay. No, we're not. We have many other problems. That's why some of our elders can't get along with each other. Because there's something worse than money in their life. It's the gospel of Jesus Christ has not become clear. The gospel of the new covenant. You hardly hear much about the new covenant gospel in the world today. Most people don't even know that the new covenant is fundamentally different from the old covenant. And if you ask me how different, as different as light is from darkness. I'm not saying that the old covenant was darkness. No, but the old covenant was like the light of the stars. Can you see the stars right now, daytime? No. They haven't disappeared. They're not dark in that sense, but they have become dark because of the light of the sun. In the last chapter of Malachi, it speaks of the Son of Righteousness arising referring to Jesus. It drove away the darkness. And in Hebrews chapter 8, we read words that many have not understood. Verse 7, if the first covenant was without fault, there would have been no need for a second. Please meditate on that. Anyone who wants to live under the law and to relate to God by rules and regulations. And do you know that in the Old Testament there were not only 10 commandments, there were 613 commandments. Whole lot of thou shalt do this and thou shalt not do that. That's the law. The law is thou shalt not. And whatever law it is, thou shalt dress in this way, thou shalt read thy Bible every day, thou shalt pray for 2 hours every day. Whatever law you make, brother, it's a law and it is faulty. The new covenant is different. Why was this thou shalt and thou shalt not does not produce godly men and women? You tell me, those of you who have preached thou shalt and thou shalt not in your churches for so many years, you tell me yourself whether you're living a godly life. Has that helped you to overcome lustful thoughts? Has that helped you to overcome your anger? Has that helped you to overcome your anxiety? It hasn't. It just makes you look nice on the outside. No, the old covenant could not accomplish what God wanted to accomplish in man. Rules will never accomplish, whether it's 613 commandments in the Old Testament or the many more that New Testament preachers have produced. It's fundamentally different in the New Covenant. And it says in verse 8, God himself finds fault with that and says, I'm going to make a new covenant, which will not be like verse 9, like the covenant I made with the Israelites. It's a new covenant which will not be thou shalt not, thou shalt not, but it will be, God says, I will, verse 10, I will. Not they, thou shalt not, but verse 11, they shall not. You know the difference between thou shalt not and they shall not? The difference is that when God does a work in me, I will not do something. When God does a work in me, I will begin to hate sin. But if you just hear a message saying, thou shalt hate sin, thou shalt love righteousness, you'll try, but you'll be under the old covenant. And I believe one of the greatest needs in all of our churches, and I would say the vast majority of our elder brothers as well, is to understand the new covenant. It's the need, not of the hour, but the need of the minute. To understand the new covenant, it would radically change your life. It changed mine. I was defeated by anger, lust, bitterness, jealousy, everything you can think of after being a believer. Anxiety, fear, everything, years after being a believer, until I understood the gospel of the new covenant. And it's not a doctrine. The fundamental difference, let me say this clearly, the old covenant was a doctrine. The new covenant is a person. It's not it, but him. Many people are seeking the baptism of the Holy Spirit as an it. It's not it, it's him. There's a lot of difference between it and him. Many people are seeking it, and they don't get it. Well, thank God you don't get it. You'll never get it. You're seeking for the wrong thing. Seek for him. When Jesus at his resurrection, he saw Mary Magdalene. He said, what are you seeking? Whom are you seeking? He said, my Lord, I want to be like that all my life. What are you seeking? Are you seeking to build my church? No, Lord, I'm not seeking to build your church. I can't build your church. That's your business. I'm seeking you. I'm a worshiper. I'm not a church planter. I'm not a church builder. I am a worshiper. Years ago, I decided that I would be a worshiper. And I don't care if I never preach in my whole life. I have no lust to preach, no lust to make money or get honor or any such thing, because I have found everything in Jesus. I'm a worshiper. And as a byproduct, the church gets built. That the Lord does. That's the way to do it. Dear brothers and sisters, make Jesus the passion of your life. That is the new covenant.